All right, welcome everybody to the November Focus On program with Library Director Jessie Hoag. She's the director at the Toronto Public Library. She recently her library was awarded the Best Small Library of Kansas through the KLA Presidential Awards at the conference in Manhattan. So we're very thankful that she would join us as she returns back to normal work. And so let's go ahead and get us started. I know you have plenty of content to fill this 30 minutes. Thanks for being here, Jessie.
Okay. Hi. Let me see. You can see my slides, right? Okay. Feel free to interrupt at any time with questions. I don't know if I'll be able to see the chat, but Dan can help me with that maybe. I talk kind of fast, so I'll try to be clear. This is kind of a repeat of a talk that Diane from Moline and myself gave at KLA on just thriving with limited resources. So Dan thought it would be good to share some of this out. So I'll go through it, kind of a condensed version of this. So that's me. I'm Jessie Hoag. Um, I'm director here at Toronto Public Library. That's where I am now. And I have been here for about 2.5 years. I was actually on the board first here at the library, and our director left for health reasons, and I was the only one that knew how to work the courier service. So I volunteered until they could find someone, and I just never left. So here I am. I was hired officially in April of 23. So our city population is 205. I will say that our service population is a little bit bigger than that. We sit on a state park, and lake, and a lot of people have second residences or primary residence around the lake outside of our taxing district. So we have over 300 library cards in circulation, but our population is technically 205. One thing about Toronto that might help paint a picture, I love data, and I looked up our census data right when I started. And for populations living under the poverty level, the average in Kansas is like 11.5%. And in Woodson County, it's over 12%. And in Toronto, it's over 27%. So that informs a lot of my decision making here. And I highly suggest data informed decision making as you lead in small spaces. So my staff hours are 25. That just got bumped up a couple months ago. One of our volunteers is now in college and got to transition into paid part-time staff. So she's 4 hours of that, which is such an achievement. If you're a solo librarian, having a little help is a big deal. Our footprint is 1,100 square feet. You're looking at most of my library, probably half. The other side is stacks for adults and one desktop computer. Um, let's see, our tax revenue is 6,407. So that is about double what it was when I started. We have kind of a 5-year plan laid out to get a little bit more sustainable with our tax revenue. And other roles, I'm a mom of teenagers. I am president of our community booster club, which puts on the parties and events around here. And I am a bookkeeper. I spend all my mornings at our family business, which is a lumberyard a block away. So I'm a bookkeeper. And fun fact, I don't like public speaking, so I'm pretending it's just Dan here right now. And KLA was difficult.
You did great.
Okay.
And she had Diane and her co-presented. They had a packed house, and everybody was very attentive and into what they were saying.
Yeah, Diane was my support system for sure. And she did make our slideshow, and I've pulled out a few of her slides where she's more of an expert, but mostly this is Diane's work too. So without money or a team, you kind of have to just maximize what you have. I promise these aren't all texty slides. I'm about to show you some fun pictures. But and if anybody wants the content, I can sure get that shared out. But before we can talk about partnerships, program, environment, any of that, you really have to shift your mindset first. I think this is a huge hurdle for a lot of people, and you have to have that big library mindset. So when we go sit through talks from Wichita Public Library or other big libraries, instead of thinking about how to scale things down, we really think about like how can we make this happen in a smaller space. So instead of we're too small, we're lucky to be flexible. So we can experiment, we can change the dates and times and location of our events. We have personal connections, so I just ask our patrons what works best for you. What services do you need? What programs would you like? And faster decision making. If it doesn't require board approval, as soon as I know I want to do something, I figure out when and I make it happen. So I'm really thankful for the ability to be able to do that. I don't know how I would do sitting in meetings, hashing out fine details all the time. I just want to move. So I'm not sure if that's a strength or a weakness there. When we talk about space, that is what our library had quite an overhaul since I started. And part of that is because we were not much of a programming library. And with one room and no meeting room, if we wanted programs, we had to find square footage first. So I really took an audit of our time, our dollars, and our square footage and had to figure out what is really serving us, what are we getting return on, and that required a lot of weeding. Um, Also, some adaptable things like furniture on wheels and smaller things I can move around. But a big portion of it is our stacks used to stick out in the middle of the room over there too, and we were able to wall mount those. And we pulled our YA completely out of our kids section and over to adults, which they love and I love. And we did that through weeding, and it's big and scary, but if you look up the average age of your collection, you'll be so shocked. And we did that first. And then we had to think about our relationship with our consortium. We do not have the square footage to be able to afford 12 feet of DVDs. We are not a storage unit. We're not big enough. So we have to be careful about how much we're keeping and whether it's serving our 200 people. So that was something I really had to kind of advocate with our board and every patron who walked in and said, "Where did everything go?" It's like they're coming around to it now.
Yeah.
They understand, but there's some pushback.
Jesse, what I'm kind of fascinated by is like I totally agree with when I saw your presentation about so many points you made. And I feel like those are some lessons that we still are teaching people who have not been in libraries, or at least we're trying to impart that perspective on people. And you're fresh to all of this, but it seems like, I mean, you just take it all so naturally. Is it because you were a board member before, or is it just as a library user, or like you're not afraid to ruffle feathers, it sounds like, by weeding when people weren't quite used to the concept. So I don't know, what would you credit that as, just an open mind or?
Definitely an open mind. I think a background in business is a big part of it. I have when I talk about auditing, square footage and that's all small business speak.
I see.
And I think that that's a big part of it, helping manage our small business. I kind of know how to look at things like that, like what's paying us back, but take more of a service mindset. I was only on our board for a few months. I had just joined when all this came up. So my background in libraries is just as a user, a lifelong library lover, but definitely not in service.
Right on.
So I'm going to move to pictures. So this is what I'm looking at right now. When you enter our building, it's an old bank, and you have the option to go next door to City Hall or to come into our library. And so knowing that there were a lot of people not using our library, but a lot of people using City Hall, I really wanted to focus on what they could see from the lobby that would make them want to come in and stay a while. So now they have a view when they walk in of our entire space. Strollers and wheelchairs can now get in the door, which was important to me, I thought. And our teens change out the painting on the window. Little things like that make sure people know that this is a space where we have fun too. And pulling that YA section out of the stacks and onto the wall, that required some weeding. This on the left was my first story time at the library. We didn't have a kids area. We had a little bookshelf for kids there, you'll see in the background. And I borrowed a rug from home to let them know it was kid friendly right there in that space. And my daughter never got a rug back because the kids like it here. So, but that was our first, and there were probably six variations before we got to our family place library. So we made a kids section first. With a grant, we got some forward face shelving, which I'll talk about in a second. And then when we became a family space library, that was grant funded, and we were able to get some what I call the parents and grandparents furniture that makes people really stay. So our average library visit time, I can't even imagine what that data would look like, but people are staying for hours. They're having coffee together, staying with kids. They'll spend the afternoon. So it changed things a lot. We wouldn't have been able to do that without that particular grant. We would have had to find other grant avenues. But yeah, we have a good quarter of the library is for early childhood. So, and really, I was really intentional about what I bought to make sure it was sustainable and could be moved around and stored easily. This is my big my big talking point with everyone. Our circulation for these books right here, this collection went up 324%. And a small part of that might have been having a little bit of programming for that age too. But the larger part is they can see the books. Before it was parents having to pull books and show them, and put them back. Now they just flip through them like crazy. Those particular ones are from Demco, and they're heavy duty and they take a beating. But I've seen this done with little bins and stuff too, which is probably a lower cost option. We had a grant, so we went for it. But it made a world of difference visually, and then with circulation, it was huge. And we're about to change over our nonfiction. We just did fiction to start with, so now we get to do nonfiction. And I would like to genreify, but I need to learn a little bit first. I have to maybe take a niche course or something. So this is where we audit our dollars in the sense that paying attention to what we're spending. And if you have zero, we were in the red when I started. If you have zero, there are a lot of things for free. So the library system is huge. The consultants are a wealth of knowledge, and their services are free and should be used, or we're already paying for them. And then before I bought most of what's in my early childhood area and some of what's in my adult, I borrowed what I could to see how my patrons would respond, to see how it worked in our library, how it's stored. And so a lot of what I decided to buy with grant money was borrowed several times first. So, and then the early literacy kits, I used those for story time. So I didn't spend $1 on storytime programming or anything like that. We had a no spend year when I started because we had to. So, free online tools like Canva is what I use for this, and flyers, Google Forms for registrations and surveys. I love surveys. And then Facebook interest groups. I just steal ideas, borrow ideas. And then creative funding. I belong to KLA and then Arcel, and those memberships have paid themselves back tenfold because they send out grant digests, and if you just Google or go to ALA, you can find more. There's lots of grants out there. You can kind of see how involved. Diane made a great point to check how involved the applications are and what you're getting in return. We had some great grants through publishers. We got a couple smaller where we were able to get 15 to 20 new books. And as you're weeding, that really makes your patrons feel better if you're refreshing. So, and then sponsorships, this was our first summer we got to spend money because I asked for business sponsorships. So I was expecting we might get a few $100s, and we got 1,100 because we first spent 2 years showing people we could do it, and it was a worthy cause. And then, they're willing to invest a little bit back into us. So, and then I can't see the bottom word, but I think it's, fundraising.
Fundraising. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show what we do for a fundraiser. I have a picture here.
I do have some
Uh,
questions
sure.
if we can kind of go back to collection stuff. I think people are
Hmm.
really interested in the browsing bins for the
Okay.
youth. And so one of the first questions was, how hard is it to keep that stuff organized with it being like that? Um, and then another follow-up question is like how, because I'm guessing the way that the plastic kind of holds those in, how difficult is it to get stuff in and out? So what have you
Yeah.
found switching over to that?
So, both great questions because those would be like the two challenges that I would say come up. One, we have volunteers. We had two all summer. I'm down to one now, and then I have my library aide. And one of the things that's on their regular when they're shelving other books, they go through and the first couple books of each of those, they check those because if a kid puts it back in the wrong space, it's just right in front. So it's just the first couple of books that we check are still in order. And then this is a picture from early on. We actually, when we redid it and wall mounted the shelves behind me, we gave it a little more headroom to pull books out. So if they're really full, you need more space above. If you don't fill them as much, you don't need quite as much. They slide out easier. But the whole stack can be just thrown forward and it stays on the shelf and everything. So it's not bad at all.
Great, thanks for going back to that. Let's jump ahead.
Okay, so this is our funding snapshot. I won't spend too much time here, but I wanted to give a pep talk to anyone who is a little low on city funds. And this can go two directions. We have a long-term plan for getting more sustainable. We also know the poverty rate here and don't want to ask for too much, but the library is worth the money, is worth the tax money. So we also want to make sure that we're giving people something back for their investment. But we didn't go in and ask for all of what we need at once to keep the doors open. We made a plan, long-term plan with our city to step it up. So we're doing that. So like for next year, our number goes from 6,045 or something, whatever it was, to like 7,500. So it's a little bit of a step, and then we're trying to work our way up to where we could sustain without grants. So if someone else steps into my spot and they're not grant writing, they'll be okay. So we're at 13.5 for tax revenue. 40% is donations and fundraising, and 45% is grants. I will say that one of the big things that I like to tell people that happened to us this year that skews this just a little bit is that um, I had a conversation with a man that walked in the library to use the restroom. It was the blizzard outside, the school was closed, and I was feeding lunches in here because that's what we do when the school is closed. And we talked about the library and the kids a little bit, and he left. And a few months later, he wrote us a check to cover a $10,000 pavilion for outside because we talked about how we bust in at the seams in the summer. And so you never know who you're talking to. Could be a benefactor, could be somebody who really needs your conversation that day. You just kind of have to treat everybody like either one could be the case. So that brings our total funding for 2025. This is kind of a projection to from 6,047 to 44,745. So quite a jump there. And then relationships. I won't harp on this too much, but these are all places I've gotten free programming and they got free marketing from me because I love Facebook and social media and throwing out whoever helps with the library. So it's mutually beneficial. It also gives them access to the patrons who are signing up for their programs. They develop relationships outside the library after that, which is super important, especially for these people that have resources that we need. They just needed, a conduit. So, and keep it simple. I don't overcomplicate it. I try to find out if they're comfortable leading the room or if they just want to be in the room. And then I follow their lead if it's possible because that's one less thing I have to do. And then knowing what our community needs is super important. We talked about that. Some more pictures. These are our stay and plays. If you saw Diane's interview, she talked about this a little bit, but we were part of the Family Space Grant, which every year they pick up a couple libraries and part of what you get with the couches and toys is training that helps you really serve the underserved, appropriately. And then we bring in monthly one other person in our community or our county, or sometimes we have to go further because we're tiny, that serves families with kids 0 to 5. And they don't lecture or anything. They just come and they're here and they get down on the floor and play with the kids and they make relationships. So it's been a worthy investment, and we're going to keep doing that even though our grant year is over. I leave the library a lot. So we don't have many places to go when I leave the library. So this is a Thanksgiving meal at the senior center, an indoor and an outdoor trunk or treat. I brought in the director from Paola to read her children's book, which is a Christmas book. And she did that while we met Santa. And then I sign up people for library cards at these events if possible. So I take my laptop and I take a bunch of Christmas books. And if they want to take one home, we do a library card sign up right there, wherever we are. And then this is more stuff happening outside our walls. I took the kids to a local restaurant to talk about entrepreneurship. We've done digital literacy workshops. The paint and sip, that's trivia night, has been our biggest fundraiser. That's over 50 people participating in a town of 200. That's in the beer garden at our bar. And then I led our candidate forum before our election there. So people are seeing me everywhere. That's important. I don't know how we're doing on time.
We still have almost 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm almost to a stopping point here. These are some of our kids programs. I'm really proud of our teen programs because everyone told me there are no kids here. And then once we got kids come into the summer programs and the art classes and everything, they said, there are no teens here or they won't come to the library. And they do. This is teens having a yoga class. We had cooking contests like Chopped. And I brought someone in who is a chef, and she gave some pointers and also judged the food. And they all loved the fact that I was going to try every dish. That was a big thing. We've brought in snakes, of course. We do as much as we can outside. So we walk and do photography classes or whatever. And then that's our teen social there on the bottom. You can see the circle of teens. That's just at the end of our teen programs, we take 10 minutes and do a kind of I gently guide the conversation, and we talk about one thing like friendships or screen time or stress or mindfulness and they're so receptive. People are always shocked by that, but they're so receptive. And then, that's our Adopt a Reading Buddy on the top right. We just did that Saturday, so I threw that picture in there. That was wildly popular, and everyone should do it. We brought in a therapy dog to sit during our story time, and then they all got to decorate a dog house and adopt a pet. Internal champions. A lot of people tell me they have trouble with relationships with the city, trustees, patrons who push back, getting volunteers. And I don't know if I just got really lucky or this formula works, but every board meeting, I bring a one-pager that is wins and things going on so that they can take that sheet and be advocates wherever they go. So my board does that. For volunteers, I called the school and asked if it was okay if I could sign off on community service because that's another town for us. So they're having to drive over here to volunteer, which, it reduces how many people can come do it. And so they're getting community service hours, and one liked it so much she stayed. So she's an employee now. I'm trying to get her to go to library school. And so I involve them as much as possible, and we celebrate wins as much as possible. Some of my board members are also helping with fundraising, and they want to be super involved. Some of them are understanding that they're just an advocate and an advisor, and I just need their butt in a seat once a month. And knowing what a person expects and them knowing what you expect is so important. We have those conversations before they start. They don't all have to come sell cookies, So we kind of match roles to passions. One of my volunteer teens was really uncomfortable with loud programming, and one loved it. So I had separate hours for them all summer. So, and then I would say our trustees and our volunteers all get a sense of ownership with all of our projects if they want it. Our Facebook is, I post every day that the library is open, and some days that it's not. Um, I said this at KLA, but sometimes the awesome stuff happening in your library, it really depends on what you're noticing. So every day I try to look for something cool to post on Facebook, not just pictures of books and flyers, because if you look at your Facebook insights, people want to see faces. So with permission, I post a lot of faces. And then we share a lot of impact stories. We're in the newspaper a lot, several newspapers because we sit Tri-County. And then I survey people and try to take their ideas and actually make them happen so that they're feeling invested. And we have something for every age. We have tech classes all the way down to the stay and plays. So,
Such great advice. Can we just pause there for a second? I know you know, we probably
sure.
won't get through everything, but I was just curious about how you decide like what kind of impact stories you're going to share. I'm guessing you sometimes leave people anonymous if they need to be. And then also, I was just curious about the surveying your community, just how you mentioned Google Forms. I'm wondering if that's how you go about it. So, can you just take a second, let us know like what would be an impact story, and what would be a way that you might survey your community?
Sure. So, for surveys, I have Google Forms with QR codes, posters, and flyers in the library with the QR code on them and at the door. So if they're leaving and haven't done it and they're like, oh, yeah, I ask. I send the QR code by text if people have registered for events and signed up to get a text reminder. Then I send them the QR code after and tell them, let me know what you thought. And then I also have paper copies of everything because not everyone's techie. So we have paper copies that then I'll put into the spreadsheets on my own. And then as far as impact stories, so for the newspaper, we mostly do more like press release type stuff. This is what we're doing. This is what happened at the library. We don't have a newspaper, but someone here has a column about Toronto in several newspapers. So I try to stay in constant contact with her. And then when it comes to grants, that's where I use the power of narration and I tell more stories about the impact that these things are having in our community. Especially if I've already tried to take something on my own and it's been successful, but I just need a helping hand. And I'm trying to get better about sending impact stories to my system and legislators. So that's a new thing I'm trying to do this year is get better about that because it does matter.
We've got about a couple of minutes left, so I don't
I think
know if
it's
you
my
want.
last slide.
Oh, amazing.
I
Okay.
don't know if anybody had questions, but burnout, pacing yourself is huge. Knowing when you need a slow month. In November, I knew I had KLA and I knew I had a lot coming up in December. So we have two big programs and I'm not doing all the small programming I usually do. I'm just here. The kids can come in after school. We have fun, but I'm not structuring a lot. Same with August. August was like that for me after a busy summer. So I know when I need to slow down and hibernate just a little bit and plan to ramp up again. I outsource as much as possible. If I can get programming brought in, then I don't have to plan it. And celebrating slow wins or small wins. Yeah, I'm kind of braggadocious, so it's all over my personal page, my Facebook, the newspaper. If something good happens here, people are gonna know about it. And that keeps you going, or I'm motivated that way anyway.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it, yeah.
Yeah. I hear so much about burnout lately. I was mentioning around the KLA conference. I think I heard burnout mentioned 4 times from 4 different people talking about how do we address it. What I was kind of struck by with you and Diane's presentation was the reminder that um, often if you're at a library that's maybe solo or small hours, that a lot of directors may have another job and multiple jobs and lots of different hats that you wear. So is do you find that being able to invest sometimes at the lumber yard and then pull out and go into the library is helpful to you to kind of remain balanced, as whereas some people who maybe never leave the library
Mhm.
for their 40 hours or whatever a week.
Yeah, and so when I talked about like auditing your time, that's a huge thing. Making the most of the 20 hours I'm here so that I'm not sitting at home feeling like I have to do all this library stuff unpaid, which you can't
Yeah.
do, or taking it home with me all the time or taking it to the lumberyard all the time. Auditing my time has been huge because there are things that were taking up a lot of my time and I was getting nothing out of, and so if surveying and tracking data and all of that is feels like a time suck to you, then ignore that and follow the vibe for a while.
Yeah. All right, well, that takes us to the top of the hour, Jesse. That was amazing. I love your messaging. I'm so glad that they chose you and your library to win this year. It sounds so deserved. So thanks again for being on the program. We look forward to seeing all the other great stuff that you guys do there. And then for everyone else, thanks for tuning in. If you're listening to the recording, thanks for making it this far. And this will be the last program for this year. So we'll say happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays to you all. And we'll look forward to seeing you all, Kansas librarians, next year in 2026. And the chat has gone wild. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome job. All right, guys, I'm
Thank
going to go
you.
ahead and end it. We'll see you next time.